In this reflection, I'd like to return to 10 Theories of Human Nature by Leslie Stevenson and David Haberman. In particular, I'm looking at what these two authors have to say about Jean-Paul Sartre's version of existentialism. Let's look at this chapter. Stevenson and Haberman identify what they consider to be three major concerns of existentialism. The first is the focus on individual human beings. Existentialists tend to think that general theories about human nature leave out what is precisely most important about what it means to be human. That is, the uniqueness of each individual in his or her life situation. The second point they identify is that an existentialist expresses concern about the meaning or purpose of an individual's life, rather than with the scientific or metaphysical search for truths. That is, the inner subjective experience is at the center of existentialism, rather than is objective truth. The third point is that existentialists place a strong emphasis on freedom, the ability of each individual to choose not just his or her particular actions, but attitudes and purpose and values or lifestyles. Let's look at what Jean-Paul Sartre's version of existentialism has to say. Stevenson and Haberman tell us that the most basic feature of Sartre's philosophy is the radical distinction between consciousness or human reality, the being for itself, and the inanimate, non-conscious reality, the being in itself. Sartre borrowed these terms from Hegel, but he gave them new definitions in his book, Being and Nothingness. Our authors tell us that what Sartre is actually distinguishing is not two substances or beings, but rather two modes of being. The way conscious beings exist is different from the way that inanimate beings exist. Consciousness is intentional. Here's an example. A rock might be an example of a being in itself. It involves no awareness of anything and no conception of self. Being for itself is radically different. It has a consciousness, an awareness of self, and it has intentionality. Sartre's second most important metaphysical assertion is his denial of the existence of God. Sartre claims that we all fundamentally desire to be God in the sense that we want to be our own foundation, that we'd like to be perfectly complete and self-justifying, to be in itself for itself. But this idea, the idea of God, is self-contradictory, according to Sartre. And so, like Nietzsche, Sartre holds that the absence of God is of utmost significance for human life. The atheist, then, does not merely differ from the theist on a point of metaphysics. He holds a profoundly different view of human life. And that's an important point. So in Sartre's view, there are no transcendent, objective values set for us, neither commandments of God nor a Platonic form of good. Nor is there any intrinsic meaning or purpose in human existence, no Aristotelian telos. The upshot is, then, that our life can be described as absurd. We are forlorn and abandoned in this world. There is no God to tell us what to do or how to live. There can be no external or objective justification for the values or way of life that anyone chooses to adopt. So let's look at this. According to Stevenson and Haberman, Sartre would deny that there is any such thing as human nature, so there can be no theories or generalizations about human beings and human lives. Sartre means that we have then no essential nature, that is, we have not been created for any particular purpose, either by God or by evolution or anything else. We simply find ourselves existing by no choice of our own and have to decide what to make of ourselves. And as each one of us does, we create our own nature or essence. Sartre sums all of this up by saying man's existence precedes his essence. Sartre's central concern, according to Stevenson and Haberman, is human freedom. That is, put pithily, we are condemned to be free. In fact, there is no limit to our freedom except that we cannot cease to be free. In Sartre's view, every aspect of our mental lives is in some sense chosen. We are ultimately responsible for our responsibility. We usually think that our emotions are outside the control of will, but Sartre disagrees. He maintains that if one is sad, it is only because one chooses to make oneself sad. That is to say, we are responsible for our emotions, for they are ways in which we choose to react to the world. Sartre tries to extend our freedom and our responsibility to everything we think and feel and do. Every moment requires a renewed choice. Sartre uses the term anguish to describe the consciousness of one's own freedom. Anguish is not fear of an external object, but the uneasy awareness of the ultimate unpredictability of one's own behavior. For example, a person walking up to the edge of the cliff fears falling, but feels anguish when she realizes that there is nothing to stop her from throwing herself off the cliff. Fear is common, but anguish is more rare, because it is the reflective apprehension of freedom by itself. Anguish, or the reflective consciousness of our freedom, is mentally consternating, and so we typically try to avoid it. Sartre thinks that we would all like to achieve a state in which there are no choices left open to us, so that we could coincide with ourselves like inanimate objects and avoid anguish altogether. But, he warns, to escape from responsibility is illusory. And so, writes Stevenson and Haberman, Sartre's gloomy description of our life is an unhappy consciousness with no possibility of surpassing its unhappy state. A crucial concept in Sartre's philosophy is the notion of bad faith. Bad faith is the attempt to escape anguish by trying to represent one's attitudes and actions as determined by one's situation, one's character, one's relationship to others, and one's social role. Sartre believes that bad faith is the default mode of most of human life, unfortunately. His crucial point is that we are always free to try to become different from what we are. But he recommends no particular way of life. He merely condemns a life that is based on bad faith or self-deception, which is any attempt to think of oneself as being not free. There is a sense, then, in which Sartre offers another perspective on the ancient virtue of self-knowledge, put before us by Socrates and Spinoza, Freud, and many others, according to Stevenson and Haberman. What Sartre was arriving at, then, is a synthesis of themes from Aristotle, Kant, Marx, and Freud, without the transcendent metaphysics of Plato or Christianity. According to Stevenson and Haberman, the last verbiage of Sartre's philosophy issues a challenge to us all. First, to become more truly self-aware, and to use our freedom to change ourselves for the better. And number two, to do what we can to work toward a worldwide society in which all people have equal opportunity to exercise their own individual freedom.